Alright, welcome back to Lenz's Comic Corner no Classics. This episode number 1972 and Doubleshot number 1860. I got two Marvel trades, featuring characters all created by Stan Lee. Alright, first up we got is Hulk versus Thor, Banner of War. This collects, Hulk vs. Thor, Banner of War Alpha, Thor Volume, I believe this is Volume 6, I think it's issue 25, and 26, along with Hulk Volume 5, issues 7 and 8. Now, this book is written by Donny Coates. Now, the whole thing of this thing is basically Hulk fighting Thor once again, because why the heck not? Now, believe it or not, this story was a very recent story, fairly recent, within the last couple months. Yes. You have Darren Warren Johnson doing the co-writing with issue 8. You have Marco Calico on the artwork. The cover art is done by Gary Frank and Ben Anderson. I do have a small complaint about this crossover. When it was coming out, I was confused exactly what order these issues came out. Because it seems as though when I was reading this, I remember reading the Alpha one shot in the correct order. But it seems as though for this, by the way, in case you're curious, so this is a 5-part story, believe it or not, where it felt as though the story was released out of order. I have no idea why the heck it was like this for. It was one of the most bizarre things. And here's something also interesting, though. It seems as though this crossover went a bit too quickly. And it also seemed like issues for this storyline was coming out the same week. That's why it got so freaking confusing. Anything wrong with the story? Aside from that, no. Story's pretty good. Now, this actually follows mostly from the pages of Hulk, believe it or not. And my guess is the reason Donny Coates did this because, he was writing Thor at the time. He had just started writing Hulk. So he figured, though, why not do a crossover? And plus, these two have fought constantly in the past. And that's also really something happened in the opening story of Donny Coates' run, Smashernaut, where in that story, Hulk was turned to a spaceship. Yeah, I have no idea why Donny Coates had a good idea. Now, here's something interesting, though. There's something that's called Banner of War, and the whole thing with Thor was that, Valhalla's empty, so related to Hulk. Never brought up here at all. It's like that plot that was either forgotten or was changed for the trade. Because if Hulk fighting Thor, you have Thor fighting the Hulk over what happened in his run, where in the city of El Paso, Hulk killed 17 people, though it turns out it was nothing really much to do with it. It also related to gamma radiation. Also, this thing is that, the whole thing is them fighting each other all period of time. And Iron Man getting involved in this story was one of the most bizarre things I've seen. Thor and Hulk disappear, so let's have Iron Man randomly show up in the story. Excuse me. To basically, in a way, sort of fight Thor. And apparently Thor forgetting the fact he's part of the Avengers. Yeah, and also when Banner realized what happened in El Paso, he didn't realize much about that until Odin, yes, the late Odin, the one who just got killed off in the previous story for Thor. Here he is, back, and him explaining to Banner what happened, him realizing, of course, also Thor. Now, here's something interesting, though. On the cover, Thor's Mjolnir is intact. But here's something interesting, though, that the cover lies about. Now, of course, Uwatsu the Watcher's in the storyline, and of course, he does what he does. Watches. Now, the hammer. Yeah, that just happened in the previous story arc. And this stuff where mentions about the God of Hammer stuff, which I'm glad I brought it up here. Now, they also had this weird thing in this story arc where you have Thor turning into the Hulk. And you're thinking, that's never happened before in the many times these two fought. You're thinking, that's a very interesting idea. And of course, they fought back and forth. Thor realizing Hulk's trauma. And that's it. Yeah. You could say it's not really a lot, but It's a good emotional story for what it is. It's not terrible per se, but I'm glad the fact Donny Caruso is bringing stuff that he wrote just recently, so people won't forget about it. You could say this is just a continuation of the stuff related to Thor, mostly. And what happens in 2 books afterwards? Well, Thor teams up with Venom afterwards, and Hulk does whatever after this. I'm going to give this book roughly a 9 out of 10. It's a pretty interesting story for what it is. Alright, next up it is Daredevil Fearless Origins. This book collects Daredevil Season 1 and the first issue of Chip Zdarsky's run for Daredevil. This is from Daredevil Volume 6, I believe it is. Yes, 6. Now, that first issue I've already discussed already in the first trade, the collect Chip Zdarsky. I'm not going to discuss that. I'm going to discuss here Daredevil Season 1. Mostly put, basically, they do mention the events of the first 6 issues of Daredevil. And you could say this book is like taking place during that same period of time. Like, it's like the first 6 issues are basically there as a B plot. Mostly. Because the major plot of the story of this particular one-shot is that there is this church that for someone in the city council is trying to get their hands on the property. And throughout the story, Daredevil finds out exactly the reason for it. And the reason is because the Catholic priest is there. Turns out he's actually the councilman's brother. And he basically holds a grudge against them for killing their father. Yep. Now, of course, in this issue, he also runs into Fantastic Four. He also has a few pages run to Electro, the Owl, Ox, Eel. I'm not sure which one it could be. It could be first, second. I don't know who it could be. But it's almost like that the writer of this one shot took those first 6 issues and basically brought in the modern day because they have computers in this book. Computers, which is something they didn't have back in the 60s. Desktop computers. In case you're curious, so who writes Daredevil Season 1? Anthony Johnson with artwork by Wilton Ives. That's who does the Daredevil Season 1 one-shot. Now, of course, you also parents here about the Fixer, the original one, the one who basically was responsible for the death of Matt Murdock's father. Fantastic Four, but great stuff in here. Though the book does, now they also bring up his fight with his brief thing with the Purple Man. It's like it's basically an abridged retelling of it, but that's simply what it is. You could say this set in alternate continuity and kind of is mostly, but I could definitely see this as potential canon, despite having a modern retelling of these issues, of the first 6 issues. Not the first time Marvel did this. Marvel also did this with Daredevil Yellow, which that was also really good as well. I'm going to give this book roughly a 9.5 out of 10. It's really good. Okay, so that's the episode review. Next episode is going to be Girlfriend. Okay, next video. Bye.